that is live 24/7 playing top 40 hits from the 60s through the 80s. You can find us on Live 365, Simple Radio, Roku, Radio Garden, and even Alexa, as well as our website. Come on and join us on the Crooked River. Welcome aboard. We're headed for the world according to Elmer, with hosts Jerry Sorensen and Pat Morrow. Don't worry, you'll enjoy it there. Better buckle in and enjoy the ride. Here come our hosts now.
Well, good evening, everyone. We're happy to have you here on the Crooked River for the world according to Elmer. And it was a jam-packed weekend this past weekend on the bands, and we'll talk about that in just a moment. I'm Jerry Sorensen, KG8RRY. Our Elmer is with us tonight, Mr. Pat Morrow, who is innate quaint parrot. I mean, or whatever.
Old quaint parrot.
N8OQP. Pat, how are you?
Not doing too bad. You?
Good.
Had an active week. Had an active day.
It was an active weekend, my friend.
I actually got out of the house today and did some stuff. And I had a towel rack that I needed put back up. Got upstairs and had to go to Lowe's to get it. Got the stuff. Come back here. Put the towel rack up. Man, we're good to go. That's pretty good when
you went to the happiest place on earth.
When you're getting as old as this old man is.
Well, you know, that's the hazardous part of this hobby, having to get up on the roof of the house. I gave that up for lit a few years ago. I try to find younger people to do that these days, Pat.
Yeah, I've been pondering still going up there to see if I can get up there, but every time I think about more than about 2 minutes, I think I'm going to have somebody else get that done.
All I have to do is look down. Whenever I look down off the end of the roof, that does it for me. It's like, isn't there somebody younger in this neighborhood that can do this?
That's about
it.
So,
you know, I'm not beyond bribery. I'll bribe. It was really something on the bands last weekend. You talk about not getting a word in edgewise. You had we had the West contest, the SKCC WES West contest going on. That's a CW contest. And then, of course, there was the big contest going on. And on top of all that, lo and behold, on Saturday evening, there was a guy that was on 40 meters, and it was the Western Electric contest. And so we had 3 contests running at once. And if you guys like contesting, or if you've never had a chance to participate in a contest and you'd like to, if you go to contestcalendar.com, now, contest calendar is one word, contestcalendar.com. It has all the ham radio contests, and it keeps a running 7-day window open. So whenever you dial it up, it'll give you the contest from the day that you're dialing in and 7 days out. So you can see what's coming up this weekend. From now until the end of the year, it's just contest after contest. So there's always something to do on the bands.
Now, don't get him wrong. You don't want to keep your windows open for the next 7 days. Yeah. I think that would be a little chilly.
Hey, it might surprise you this week. This week was just like every other week, and I got some cards in the mail.
No, you didn't get no cards.
Yeah,
how did you get cards?
I would share a couple with you. Here is a great station, and I say this is a great station because of what he said about me. This was a CW contact, and you can read right there. I just want this to go on the video forever, that he pointed out that I send great code. And so there you go. You'll never see that again. You'll never hear that again. But at least one guy in the universe thought that I had a good fist. And that's this guy, K10V. So thank you for the kind words that you sent along, Mike. I appreciate it very much. He is in New London, Connecticut. And it is kind of interesting because Connecticut is not a very big state. And yet I've talked to a number of people in Connecticut. So there are apparently a number of ham radio operators in Connecticut. Here's one from up north. These are the folks up there where it's really chilly. VE3AXT. Of course, he's a Canadian station, and this is Paul. Here is N4CE, And this is a homemade card and not a bad one. I saw something on this one that I've never seen on another one. He has a place here where he indicates whether you are at a fixed station or whether you're mobile. And I've never seen that on a CW card before. N4CE is out of Rockingham County, North Carolina. And I remember this telephone call, I remember this ham call, and he has an outstanding station, very powerful. And here's a card that I received from a station that I had talked to one time before, and he never sent the first time, but he did send this time. This is N5NSN. Now, tap that out with me, you know. Da dit. Dit, 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 dit. 5 dits. Okay. Then da dit, 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 da dit. It's a great CW call. And N5NSN sent this along. As you can see, he has an AM transmitter that he has purchased from someone, and he has converted that AM transmitter, tube type transmitter, over to ham use. I admire that. Anybody that makes their own transmitter or is able to convert a transmitter from band to band has my respect. And of course, he is in the great state of Texas. God bless Texas. Gotta love those folks down in Texas. Yeehaw!
And all the
he is a bug operator. Now, if you're not in ham radio, or if you've never been in CW, you might be wondering what a bug operator is. A bug is a type of CW key. Can you operate a bug there, boss?
Nope.
I can't either. I am not a bug operator.
I will give you.
I've taken notice that there are 2 types of bug operators in the world. There are bug operators that are very, very, very good. And then there's bug operators that are really horrible. There is nothing in between. You can neither understand what a person is sending with their bug, or you can't understand a thing they're saying. I don't know if there's nowhere to practice, or there's no way to practice, or whatever, but people are either really good or really bad.
Just sounds a little buggy to me.
What's that?
I said that just sounds a little buggy to me.
Well, you're kind of full of them tonight, aren't you?
I'm always full of it, Jerry.
Yep. If you're gonna master the bug, you spend some time with it before you go on the air. Vibraplex is the company that makes the bugs, and there's all different kinds of bugs, and they're very expensive keys, and apparently they're very hard to operate because there's just so few people that are really good at them. I had a guy write in this week, and he sent me an email, and he's a gentleman I know from a website, and he's a ham operator overseas, actually, and he is in jolly old England. And he asked me, he said, Jerry, he said, I know that you're on the bands a lot. He said, can you give me some pointers on how to operate FT8? And of course,
I'm surprised Pat, my email's not burning up right now.
You know how I feel about FT8.
I got this Elmer by the name of Pat. He can help you out.
Actually, what I told him is I said I don't operate FT8 because I don't consider that ham radio. But I said, I happen to be on a radio show with a guy that does operate FT8 and is real good at it. So after we have our video tonight, Pat, which is 50 things you can do this year in ham radio, great video. You're going to enjoy it. All the different facets of this hobby. Perhaps you can make some comment for our listener who has promised that he will listen to this program, and maybe you can give him some pointers on just what FT8 is and how he can operate with it, because I don't know how to help the guy.
Well, I can, if we can get into this, or when we want to get into this.
I'm not even certain the radios I have here in my ham shack will go on FT8.
Actually, some will and some won't.
Some of the old Swans, my Swans?
I don't know. Actually, if you have an input...
No, that's only input on these things. It's amazing. They actually do have an input for the Morse code key, But the Swan was never designed to be a Morse code radio. The Swan was strictly designed to be a sideband radio, period.
The big thing that
And
you
that's
have
what
to,
it does.
if you can, most any radio actually can do FT8. The thing
Yeah.
that you have to keep in mind, though, is some of them have to have an external sound card attached to them. FT8, believe it or not, FT8's been around for a long, long time. This was a derivative, more or less, of the packet radio. And if any radio that would do packet will do FT8.
Yeah, no, trust me when I tell you that the Swan does not recognize the sound card. They had no concept of what it's saying. My newest radio was built in 1966.
Yeah, maybe not. But they have.
Oh, at any rate, what can you do in this great hobby? You know, there are basically three license classes in ham radio. There's the technician's class, which is how most folks start. In fact, that's how everybody starts out. Even if on your very first day you go test all the way out to amateur extra, you still started as a tech because you had to take that test first. So you were a tech for at least a few minutes before you moved up to general. But those are the three classes. There are the technicians, then the general license is your second license, and then your amateur extra is your final license. Now, there are still some other licenses floating around. I know of at least two people that are what are called advanced, and I don't know what went into advanced. But then I still have a couple of people that I correspond with, believe it or not, that hold novice licenses to this day. Now, you can't become a novice today, but if you have a novice license, you can continue to renew that license. And I believe you still can continue to renew that license because they are carrying novice licenses.
At one point, I think what they were talking is that you were only allowed to have the novice license for a year, and you had to upgrade it.
That was originally.
I don't know what happened after that, but you know, when I came into the hobby, I was what they called at that time a no-code tech. I didn't take I couldn't hear the code, but I will. Let me give you a little hint. I took and placed a Facebook post here a couple of days ago. Did you happen to see it, Jerry? It said something. It said I am taking and is studying or trying to figure out the same mode of communication that the fox talked to the horse.
I had no clue what you were talking about.
Yes, you did, because we covered this once. What the fox? What the fox says? What the fox says? About a month ago.
See, I didn't put that together with ham radio. That's the problem.
And what I'm doing, I actually downloaded a code practice app, and I'm up to 12 letters.
Wow, that's awesome. So you're at the same speed I'm at.
I'm not. I don't have the whole. I mean, what I'm up to is, I actually can remember 12 of the letters.
Oh, okay.
You know,
all right. So you've got 12 out of the alphabet.
You got to get the alphabet first.
Absolutely.
And but I'm up to the. I'm having it.
Now, can you hear it? Okay.
Pretty much, yeah. There are times that some of it sounds similar, but
that's the thing about code.
I'm going to tell you, and this is coming. I had always heard that the word or the letters have certain sounds.
Yes, they do.
And if you can copy the sound, you don't listen for the dits and daws. You actually go for the sound of the letter.
That's the secret right there.
And I'm hearing that this time. I never heard that before. When I've tried, I've tried to get the code
sounds
twice.
Like a song.
Exactly. I've tried to get the code twice, and this time, this is the third time's the charm, hopefully. But this time on it, I'm actually able to hear it, and I'm hearing like the letter P, or a Q,
the da dit,
or V, which is B is da did it, and B is
did it, right.
You hear that, and immediately you go for that letter. And
Well,
I never
it's
did
like
that
my
before.
name. You know, my name is da da dit dit da da dit da da dit da 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 da. I can hear that anybody that plays that song on the bands, it automatically jumps out at me because I recognize that as my name. I don't recognize that as Gerry. I just recognize the sound of that complete, in essence, song.
Yeah,
It's like a miniature song.
yeah. But anyway,
But that is the secret to learning code, by the way.
I'm actually picking up on some of that. The um, other thing, the even I can remember the slant bar from uh, when you have a repeater. It's da did it da did da da did,
Right.
and that's slant bar R. That's what that stands for. And stuff I remember from the first or second time, but I'm actually catching up on it again, and I'm
Well, some
hoping.
of it relates back to when we were young, because like when I get done sending, if I have a conversation with someone and I initiated the conversation, when I'm done, I'll go da 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 da. Well, that's shaving a haircut,
2 bits,
5 bits.
2 bits.
And so that's stuff that you and I recognize from when we were children or we were teenagers or whatever that's still carried forward in the protocol of CW today. It's an interesting learn.
But I hopefully within the next 2-3 weeks will actually be good enough to start copying, and you may actually hear me on the band.
You know what? I'll be listening for you. I'll be listening to for that call sign. That's awesome. Congratulations on doing that. I learned on the third time. Third time was a charm for me, so third time may just very well be a charm for you. At least I hope
Uh,
it is, my friend.
it's actually when you when you practice to or when you've tried it 2 other times, some of the stuff just comes right back.
Yeah, it
Like
sticks
the
with you, doesn't
A,
it?
the T, whatever. And
I first learned code or learned of code when I was a Boy Scout. You know, that was one of the things. They had a merit badge. It was a radio merit badge. And one of the things that you had to do is you had to learn code. Or, there were different things you could pick from. That was one of the things you could pick from. And so I had learned a perfunctory amount of code during while I was obtaining that skill in Boy Scouts, and so that carried forward. But that was stuff that I had learned 30 years earlier. But it's amazing how it does still stick with you. I knew the alphabet still up through about H from just what I had learned in Boy Scouts.
I can remember back in the day when I took my tech test, there was actually a question on that test about what are 3 letters that every Morse code operator or every radio operator should know.
And what are those 3 letters?
Did it da da
The
da did
Titanic
it
knew them.
did it da 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 did it.
Yeah, you betcha.
And
Yeah, we're going down. Send some send some help.
uh,
People have used that down through the years. Not only on the radio, they have used that using lights. They've done that using mirrors. They've done that using semaphore. They've used those letters in that manner. In fact, everybody recognizes those letters. I think my wife has no interest whatsoever in ham radio, and she has no interest whatsoever in Morse code, although she's supportive of me in the hobby. But there was a commercial that came on TV the other night, right in the middle of a Hallmark movie. And one of the things that happened during the course of this 60-second commercial is SOS was given in code, and it was done as a joke. It was supposed to be funny. And she, someone who has nothing to do with ham radio, knew right away what did da 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 did was. She knew that, and so
yeah.
I think the general public recognizes that as the international symbol of distress.
Let me since we're on the topic of Morse for a second. There was something I read here a couple of weeks ago that still I'm going to actually on my when I do my club net, I'm going to use this as a trivia. Let me throw it at you.
Okay.
Do you know there was a guy that was the first American to find out that Stalin had passed away? Do you know who it was and what mode?
Yeah, it was CW and it was Johnny Cash.
You got it. All right.
Yeah, yeah. That isn't that fascinating?
That is.
Johnny Cash was what was known in the service, the military, as a code interceptor.
Yep.
These were people that military people have their own language, and one of the words that they use is kind of creepy to me, but it's normal to them. They call spies, or people we call spies, spooks, and Johnny Cash was a spook. He was one of these that listened to Morse code on the radio during his shift while he was working, and he was looking for intelligence that he could glean from what he was hearing from the enemy. And it might interest you to know that there are a number of nations, including Russia, that still teach all of their military Morse code and still have ham radios in their planes and their boats, etc.
Yep. I thought that was
excuse me.
Cash wasn't actually an amateur radio operator. He was doing this when he was in the, I think it was
That's
Navy.
right. He was a code interceptor for the United States military.
Yeah.
Yes, he was.
And
wrote some pretty good songs too, as a matter of fact.
Ring of Fire.
Some of my, I think I've heard a Johnny Cash song or two every so often on the Crooked River. So
yeah, you do here and there.
There you go. Well, let's do this. There's 50 things you can do this year in ham radio. There's 50 things you could do today in ham radio, and they're all on this videotape. So let's go ahead and roll this thing, Pat.
This thing is about 19 minutes long. Did you know that?
Yeah, it gets a little lengthy. We'll go as long as we can stand it. How's that?
All right, just let me know. I actually nicknamed this 50 Shades of Ham Radio.
Like I said, you're on top of it tonight, Pat.
We will
We'll be back on the other side of the 50 Shades of Ham Radio on the Crooked River Radios, The World According to Elmer. We're glad you're here.
The number of things that you can do with an amateur radio license is really quite amazing. It's a brand new year, and I was making a list of things I was hoping to accomplish in the ham radio hobby this year, and the list started getting pretty big. And then I thought, why not make a bigger list and share it with all of you? And that's what I did. I came up with 50 things you can do in the ham radio hobby this year. So whether you're an experienced ham looking for a new challenge this year, or whether you're just curious about the hobby and want a better understanding of what you can do with a license, this video is for you. Should be interesting. Let's get going. I'm in my shack today. It's nice and sunny outside, but it's cold. Too cold to go for a hike or go operate outside today, so I'm in my shack. Let's get started on the list of 50 things you can do in ham radio this year. Hams love their contests. There's contests happening all the time, year-round. They happen on all different ham bands and all different types of modulation, from digital to CW to single sideband, all the different types. They run a certain length of time, and the object is usually to make as many contacts as you can in that given time period. You submit your logs and you get awards if you win. Even if you're not going after wins or trying to win an award, the bigger contests are a great time to get on the air because it's a great way to make a lot of contacts in a short period of time. So join a contest. Nets are like conference calls for hams. They happen on repeaters, they happen on HF, they even have nets on the digital voice systems like D-Star and DMR. Why don't you go ahead? At the beginning of most nets, they usually take check-ins, not every net, but they like to take check-ins to find out who's listening, who might participate in the net, and there's all different types of topics. So why don't you find a net you're interested in that covers a topic you're interested in on any one of the platforms and check in. You can send email via ham radio, which is actually pretty cool. You can use WinLink, which is both a program and infrastructure set up by hams for hams to send email, or you can use APRS. So go ahead and send that email. If you're in the United States and you're stuck with a call sign that you don't like, well, you can get a free vanity call sign, and it's shorter. Technicians, general, extra, it's all open. Extras get the shortest call sign, but anyone can get a free call sign of their choosing. Way better than the one that FCC gave you. Digital modes are kind of controversial, but a lot of people use them. The hot one right now is FT8. A lot of people on FT8. Easy to make a lot of contacts very quick. But there's a lot of other digital modes. Olivia, Hellscriber. I mean, there's a bunch. Why don't you try a new one?
Ready?
Got a tech license? Why not upgrade to a general? And if you're a general like me, why don't you upgrade to an extra? I plan to do that this year. And if you're an extra, well, doing
Wait
the
for
other
it.
49 things on this
Yeah,
list.
you're done.
Building is a great skill to have, and there's lots of kits and projects available now more than ever. You can find kits and projects to build, from radios to antennas to accessories, all different types of skill level, from easy to very hard. But why don't you build something?
You know what? That's great fun.
Parks on the Air, or POTA, is a year-round activity designed to get hams out of the house, get them operating out of doors. You can go to their website and see which parks in your area might be available for you to score points. You go to the park, you activate it, you make contacts, and then you get points. And with enough points, you start getting awards. Pretty cool activity.
Your club just did that.
Hamfests are great places to buy new and used equipment, learn from other people, interact with fellow hams, and basically just have a good time. The biggest Hamfest is up in Dayton, Ohio, once a year. There's other big ones kind of regionally, but if you get a chance, if there's one in your area, you should definitely go to a Hamfest. I'll go to a couple this year. I'm hoping to get to Dayton.
Sea Park is April 9th.
Yeah,
Next
if
year.
you're a ham, I probably don't have to remind you to think about buying a new radio. You're probably thinking about that now. Morse code, or CW as we call it in the hobby, used to be a requirement for getting your license. You used to have to know Morse code to get an amateur radio license. Thankfully, that's not the case anymore, but it is still a widely used and very effective way to do ham radio. You can make contacts all over the world at any time using Morse code. It's super effective and efficient. You can actually make contacts further away with CW than you can with voice.
Yes, you can, and it's great fun.
The lifeblood of any hobby is attracting new people to come into the hobby. So why don't you make it a goal this year to convince somebody to get their license? If you have friends with similar interests, they might also share an interest or curiosity about ham radio. Talk to them about it. Get them licensed. You can send SMS text messages using ham radio. You can do it via APRS. If there's other ways, let me know in the comments section. De-expeditions. These are things where people spend thousands and thousands of dollars and years planning to go to some far-flung corner of the planet that's usually uninhabited and way far away from humanity. They set up ham radio stations and they make contacts for days. And there's huge pileups.
I would have loved to
Everybody
do that.
wants to make that contact because who knows the next chance you'll get to make a contact on, South Pacific deserted island. But if you can do it this year, they announce them well in advance. You can make contacts with some part of the world you may never have a chance to do again. Yeah, if you're not one of those crazy conspiracy theory people, the moon is up there and you can bounce radio frequency off of it. People use giant antennas and lots of power to make UHF, VHF contacts on the other side of the planet by bouncing their signal off the moon. Pretty cool stuff. Requires a specialty equipment. Pretty expensive, but if you can find someone in your area who's doing it, they'd probably be happy to show you and even let you try to make a contact. There's 2 field days, summer field day and winter field day. It encourages hams
new
to
rules came
get
out
outside,
regarding winter
set
field
up a
day.
station and make a whole bunch of contacts over the course of a weekend. If you're part of a club, your club will probably set up a big thing for field day. I know my club did last year. It was great fun. I plan on doing it again this year. I might even take part in winter field day. We'll see. But if you're looking to make a lot of contacts, find out when field day is, because the bands are jam-packed with people. You can't help but make tons of contacts when field day is going on. And hey, get outside. It's a lot of fun. If you're interested in ham radio because of emergency preparedness, well, you need a Go Box. A Go Box is basically a self-contained ham radio setup, self-powered, that you can just grab and go and set up anywhere and have some communication. So build that Go Box. There are so many different opportunities for hams to volunteer. You can volunteer for different organizations. You know that a lot of times road races, bicycle races, marathons, they still rely on hams to volunteer, stand on the course with their radios, and report any problems that might be happening on course. So a lot of opportunities to volunteer. Why don't you put your skills to use for the community? Yes, there are satellites that orbit the Earth that have ham radio repeaters on them. You can send your signal to the satellite. It'll repeat it over a wide area of the Earth. Other people can respond to you, and you can make contacts by using satellite repeaters. Cool stuff. Hams who participate in a lot of contests or activities that have awards are called paper chasers. They like to, wallpaper their house with different awards that they get for their activities. There's a lot of awards that you can get, not only from contests, but other things like Worked All States, on all the different modes, all the different bands. Also DXCC, Worked Every County. There's just a ton of awards that you can chase. So why don't you find one, make it your goal, and get that paper.
The world's largest teapot.
This is by far the easiest one on the list. You have an interest in ham radio. That's why you're watching the video, and I try to put out decent ham radio content. It's like a match made in heaven.
Well, the shameless plug there.
POTA was on the list earlier, Parks on the Air. Well, there's also something called Summits on the Air. Same concept. Get out of the house, climb a mountain, make some contacts, and get some award points. I've got a video where I activate a local mountain called Kennesaw Mountain. That was a fun day. I'm not sure if all amateurs in the world have a QRZ page. It's qrz.com, but I know they automatically give everyone, I think in the US, their own page. When you make contact with somebody, oftentimes if they're near a computer, they'll be looking you up on qrz.com. So why not update your page, put some new photos on it. If you've had a page for a while, put what you've been doing lately on it, and check out mine, K4BBL on qrz.com.
Or N8OQP.
Clubs are great, but they're not for everybody. Some people use social media as their ham radio club, whether it be Reddit or Facebook groups.
Yeah,
or
that's
wherever,
not a good ham radio club, by the way.
People are sharing ham radio information. Why don't you go there, hang out a little bit, and if you see somebody new or interested in the hobby that has a question, answer it. And hey, be nice. Be nice. Speaking of clubs, if you've got a ham radio club, within driving distance, go to one of their meetings. You don't have to join. They'll love to have you. And maybe you'll learn something. Maybe you'll meet some nice folks. Maybe you'll want to join the club. Everyone's welcome at my club's meetings. I know that for a fact. North Fulton Amateur Radio League. If you're in North Georgia, feel free. We have meetings once a month. Come to one of our meetings and check it out.
A lot of fun.
This one might take either some patience or, if you've convince somebody to get their license, you can automatically be their first contact. If you're a ham, you remember your first contact. Everyone does. Why don't you hang out on the repeaters or wait for somebody to make that call, throw their call out there, answer it. You might just be somebody's first contact. Special event stations can be a lot of fun. They happen all the time, all around the country. Yes. They could be warships, they could be monuments, there'll be special events for a lot of different things. Last year I worked the 13 Colonies event. Basically there was a special event station or stations in each of the 13 colonies, and everyone over the course of a long weekend tried to make contacts with all 13 colonies. I did. It was a blast. Make a contact with a special event station.
I've always wanted to do one for the
I'm definitely doing this Derby. One this year.
That's a good idea.
Find something big and metal that was never meant to be an antenna.
We used to do that every year.
Use it as an antenna. You'll need a good tuner. I'm in my shack today because it's cold outside. You can see my shack definitely needs an upgrade. I need stuff on the walls, maybe some awards or something. But why don't you upgrade your shack too? A new chair, something new on the walls, new monitor. Make it a more comfortable place to be, because that's where you want to be. Every couple months, astronauts or NASA or the Russian Space Agency are celebrating something, and they'll send a bunch of pictures down to Earth using slow scan television. You can use your handheld ham radio, a phone, a tablet, or a computer to decode those images as they get sent down. I made a video doing just this thing recently. I'll put a link in the description. It's fun.
Yeah, I use my
So
Yaesu.
we've all made
29
contacts with
ADR.
somebody in their QTH or in their car. That's not too tough. But how about somebody on a bicycle or someone under parachute or someone in, I don't know, airplane, helicopter? Why don't you try to find an unconventional station and work them this year? Put them in the logbook. A lot of people in the radio control hobby get their amateur radio license so they can fly drones or planes using amateur radio frequencies. You already have the license, or you want your license, so why not get the plane or drone and give it a fly?
That sounds like fun.
We actually
So
taught a
when
bunch.
meteors come through the atmosphere, they leave a wake, a disturbance, and you can actually bounce RF energy off of a
I've heard
disturbance.
this.
It
Now
can
that's
last anywhere from a
interesting.
few
I've not
seconds to a few
heard it
minutes.
done. But
Some people use highly directional antennas and a lot of power to extend the range of VHF and UHF over the horizon. They'll make contacts using meteor scatter. Again, something you may want to find somebody who's already doing it to give it a try. So you've got your tower and your stacked beams and your full legal limit power amp. It's pretty easy for you to make contacts. Why don't you try to go outside and work a little QRP, 5 watts, 10 watts, with just a wire in the tree. It's a challenge. That makes it fun.
exactly.
Here's another contest that works year-round, and you can just get points wherever. Flora and fauna. These tend to be more of the nature preserves or animal preserve type parks, but you can find a list of parks in flora and fauna. You can go there. You can make contacts. You can.
I
get
talk to
points.
Flora
Another
every
great
day.
activity.
You do. I was just thinking that.
Microwaves. They're great at heating up hot pockets. They can also be used to carry your voice and data. Technicians have access to microwave bands. Why not try to make a microwave radio, make a contact, or find somebody who's already doing it and just use their station?
Very specialized area.
A lot of modern day products kick off noisy RF signals. I'm looking at
Drowning
you,
in
plasma
noise.
screen TV. They can interfere with ham radio stations. So if you've got a station in your house and you're struggling with noise, find that noise and kill it. Ferrite beads are your friend.
Hunting
When
pounds.
ham radio operators go fox hunting, it very rarely involves horses, beagles, and trumpets. More than likely, it'll involve highly directional antennas. Somebody will hide a transmitting beacon, and then a bunch of other people will use their location finding antennas to go try to find that.
That's going to be a show
Fun
topic
stuff.
next year.
You might be into boating and need a new boat anchor or need your boat anchor fixed up, but in the ham radio,
Oh, come
boat
on,
anchors
boat
are
anchor,
old
that's
radios,
funny.
mostly because they're huge, heavy, and require tubes. If you're into fixing things, if you like the idea of tinkering with electronics, why don't you buy one of these old radios, fix it up, and get it back on the air? That would be.
That's me right there.
As modern consumers, we all rely on product reviews to decide what we're going to buy. Well, if you're a ham radio operator and you've used a product for a while, why don't you go ahead and write an in-depth review? Be honest, be thorough. It'll help everyone else in the hobby out make good buying decisions. Thanks.
Good idea.
If you own, operate, maintain, or are the webmaster of a ham radio related website, you need to update your website. Seriously. D-Star, DMR, System Fusion, all great digital voice technologies. You don't have to use the internet. You can actually use digital voice simplex, and there's even some opportunities to use digital voice on the HF bands. So why don't you give one of them a try? It's actually pretty fun. I do DMR and D-Star. I know a lot of people get into ham radio for emergency preparedness. Well, if you're really concerned about emergencies and you want to help out and you want to be the best at emergency communications, you should join one of these two groups, Aries and Races. They are the people who actually deploy when there is an emergency to set up emergency communications. They work with local governments and first responders, and they work together to make plans and to deploy and practice. So if you're serious about emergency communications, think about joining one of these two groups.
Skywarn, React.
The International Space Station currently has a digipeater on it. You can send APRS packets up to the space station and it will resend them out over a big part of the Earth. You can make contacts this way. You can receive APRS packets from much further away than you normally would be able to. thanks to the International Space Station. Hams sure have found a lot of ways to pull off two-way communication. One of the more interesting ones is SSTV, slow scan television. This is where hams will transmit images with some text on it, their call sign, their location, signal reports, things like that. They'll exchange 2 or 3 images, and it actually counts as a legit contact for contests, awards, things like that. It's pretty popular on 20 meters and 40 meters. You can check it out. I have a video where I did this on UHF, so you can check that out too. Much like ham radio websites, there's a lot of room for improvement for ham radio apps. So if you're able to code, you can do the community a huge service and probably make some money by writing new and improved apps for phones, tablets, computers, whatever. But ham radio apps, there's an opportunity there. Boy Scouts,
yeah, this is the big deal here. This just happened.
Radio merit badge. They need to learn a lot about radio. They need to make some contacts or build a radio. You can help them out with that. You're an expert. Help a Boy Scout.
Dale Lamb is involved in that.
It doesn't have to be solar, but find some other way to power your station, whether it be solar, wind, water, I don't know. There's lots of green ways to produce energy, and you can use that to make contacts. Especially if you're into emergency communications, you need some kind of off-grid power. Am I right?
You're right.
So EHAM has a bit of a reputation. Usually when this question is asked, it conflates into a giant flame war, which is kind of amusing. So really, this one's more for my benefit than yours, but do it if you want. Whew, finally, we're up to number 50. Well, and it is simple.
You covered just about everything.
Do the ham radio community a service and add your ideas or what you might be planning to do this year down in the comments. I know there's a lot more to do with your ham radio license. I know I just scratched the surface on all the 50 that I listed, but if you have other ideas, please share them with us. Thanks. That's my list of 50 things you can do in ham radio this year. I hope you got some ideas, or maybe it inspired you to get your license. Either way, I hope you enjoyed the video. If you did, like, subscribe, share it with a friend. I sure do appreciate it. This is K4BBL, and I'm clear. 7-3.
And I'm clear. I like it. That's a great video, and he did a fantastic job. He covered a lot of different areas of ham radio that most people don't think about. One of the things that he was just talking about was help a Boy Scout. Dale Lamb and there's some guys from the Tuscarawas County Club and down here in this area, there's a camp down here. I think it's Camp Tuscazor, I believe.
Yeah, I think you're right.
To say right. Anyway, they do a Boy Scout thing every year, and that's pretty gratifying to see that happen.
We went up to Manitowoc up here in Summit County.
Mm-hmm.
We were involved in that for a couple of years until they pretty much lost interest in us. In fact, we did JOTA from there for 2 years, Jamboree on the Air in October. And from what I understand, Manitowoc has actually got a station, a ham station there now that is active about a quarter of the time. I know that was it ICOM, Yaesu, one of those companies actually would give the Boy Scouts, if a encampment like that wanted it, they would give them radios and an antenna put up, but they had to jump through some hoops, like they had to have an amateur that was involved in it and all that in order to get it all set up. That was a thing that one of the major companies was doing 3, 4, 5 years ago, something like that.
You probably, your colleges tend to have ham stations also. Both of my schools that I went to.
Yeah, Akron U's got one. Akron U's got one. So does Kent. And I believe even Stark State does.
Well, I know that Ohio State has a station. Even the small schools that I went to generally have some kind of ham station. So anything that you can do to try to bring people into the hobby. I talked with my neighbor over the back fence about ham radio. I was installing an antenna 2 years ago when I first started. And he said, "What are you doing?" And I said, "Well, I'm installing this antenna and I'm digging these spots for radios." And he goes, "What's a radial?" And so one thing led to another. Pretty soon he was over in the backyard helping me dig and helping me put radials in. And that's when I gave him the Gordon West book for technician. And so he studied his for his technician and passed his technician's license. So
Super.
you'd be surprised who around you may be interested in ham radio if they are simply given a chance to learn about the hobby.
Well,
And of course, you're involved in that because you're the president of a club.
I've got 5 people that live in this house. 3 of them are hams.
There you go.
And my daughter, who doesn't live here, and my deceased wife were also hams. And I never said a word to them about getting into it, but they saw how much fun I was having and wanted to enjoy, wanted to get into the hobby, and I couldn't help it.
So they were drawn to your example,
Exactly.
and that's the thing. There's an old saying that your actions speak so loudly, I can't hear a thing you're saying. And so if they see ham radio lived out in front of them, then they'll be interested in getting into the hobby.
I've also mentored, well, besides you, I've mentored 2 other people to get
Yeah, well,
into
you
it.
just out and out challenged me. You said, "What's holding you back?"
And that was that was how I got into it. My friend told me I was too dumb to ever get a license.
Whoa!
And he threw down the
Those
gauntlet.
are fighting words.
On April 1st, he threw down the gauntlet. By the 15th, I had the book. Or actually, by the 7th, I had the book. And a week later, I was taking the test.
The rest is history, as they say.
But
That's funny.
you don't have enough time, and you're too. You just, I don't think you're smart enough to pass it.
Well, ham radio is kind of a smart person's hobby.
And the next thing you knew,
they say. All right. Speaking of smart people, from my buddy that wrote in that I could not help, tell him how does he get involved with this ham radio activity called FT8?
if you have an ICOM 7300 or a radio like that, the 7300 actually has a sound card built into it. So hooking that up for FT8's a breeze. All you have to do is get the computer cable, plug it into the back of the radio, plug it into your USB bridge, make a couple changes on the computer, and download WSFT. JTX, I don't remember what. WSJTX, I believe is what it's called. JT number 10 is what that stands for. That's a piece of software that goes on the computer. You put that on the computer, go through the instructions to get it set up. It has to receive off of the radio and transmit to the radio. So it could be a little interesting setting up. But once you're there, piece of cake.
Now let me ask you, where does this software? Where does he obtain that?
It's on the web. Let me get the exact. We'll talk here, but I can get you.
So he has to have a radio. The radio has to be connected up to an antenna. So that part of it is ham radio. But then all of a sudden there's a computer involved here that has to be connected to the radio. What kind of cabling? Is this cabling that comes with the computer? Is this cabling that comes with the radio?
If it's like the ICOM 7300, it's just a regular standard USB cable.
Oh, okay. So it's no great install.
And if it's not, you have to use this thing called a signal link, which is an external sound card. Let me move my camera here. I'll show you what that actually looks like.
Ooh, I'm getting woozy.
Sorry.
Wow. That's quite a picture, Pat.
There, that actually.
We'll call this part of the we'll call this segment Mr. Pat's Neighborhood. Mr. Rogers right now is looking down from heaven and smiling.
That's the actual signal link there. And as
The piece in front.
Yeah, that's.
Okay, I've seen those advertised in ARRL's magazine.
That's the actual signal link. And what that is, it's just an external sound card.
Okay.
And all you have to do, one side goes to the radio. Put that back up there. Put this back together. One side goes to the radio. The other side goes to the computer. There's 2 or 3 adapters you have to put on. The cost of that signal link's about $100. So if you don't,
well, that is one thing about ham radio. He had a segment in there. One of the things you can do is buy another radio. This seems to be pretty much a weekly occurrence for most hams.
You get what it's the old saying, Jerry. If you're gonna play, you gotta pay.
If you want to keep your kids off drugs, just get them involved in ham radio. They won't ever have any money to spend on anything else.
That's that old saying too. If you steal a man's wallet, he'll be poor for a week. You get him into ham radio, he'll be poor the rest of his life.
Okay, so oh, that's a good one. I'm going to have to remember that. All right, so the next question he's going to ask is, once you got this signal link now that you spent $100 on, you've got your ICOM radio that you spent $1,300 on, you've got your computer that you spent about $700 on, and so your cabling, that's probably another $50. So you're all hooked up. Now, what bands do you go on?
You can, the FT8 software actually is pre-programmed.
Okay.
It's got a drop down where you can go from pretty much, FT8 is on pretty much all the HF bands. It goes from 6 up through 160. So there's spots for that everywhere. If anywhere that there's digital or CW, that's all classified as the same. But more or less, like on 20 meters, I'm trying to think what the frequency. On 40 meters, it's 7.074. On 20 meters,
I hear you guys go like between 7.070 up to about 7.090 in that area. Now, sometimes during contests, and this is a source of great irritation for some of us, one of the SKCC frequencies that most Morse code operators like myself use, as an example, is 7.055. During contests, what will happen is there are people on FT8 and RTTY and some of the other digital modes will get on the bands that are traditionally Morse code, and then, of course, they make that those bands unable to be used for Morse code, and then people like me sit at home and fume. And we try to think up ways that we can block your signal, but we don't do that because we're good amateur operators and we believe in sharing the road. But you should hear the names that you get called.
And I can understand that because, you know, you're not 3 kilohertz away for one thing. The only other way that would be something that could be done like that on one side or the other is you could put a bandpass filter in, or you could put a choke in there. You know, that actually I can't.
Some of these digital signals wipe out a big bunch of bandwidth.
You can put a cavity in there that just narrows it to your receive. If you
like a notch filter.
Yeah, notch filter, exactly. You notch filter that, it's going to help you out quite a bit.
I don't know. I've got some pretty good radios.
A lot of people can't afford the notch filters either.
Yeah, those are expensive. Well, the one modern radio that I have is the ICOM 7100, and it seems to be very selective. But when it comes to these digital signals, you know, I would think that the digital signals would be more precise than the analog signals, but it certainly doesn't seem to be the case. They wipe out a lot of bandwidth.
Yeah, because of the bandwidth that the thing, you have to consider, what is it? You get your bandwidth is only allowed at. I'm trying to think back to the test. Is it 3K, 300 hertz or something like that?
Yeah, bandwidth is tight. You know, and in sideband you've got your lower sideband and you've got your upper sideband. In AM, you've got both of those plus the carrier, and of course the AM is a very I'm on a 6 meter AM net during the evening. It's and we're the only people on 6 meters that I can tell, because I've gone from the top to the bottom of the band and I can't hear anybody except for us. But when that AM net is running, it's five kilohertz wide. It's an expansive amount of bandwidth that AM uses, which is why AM is not that popular anymore. It's not a good use of your power. The FT8, I think the thing that always recommended FT8, or the idea or the theory behind that, was during times when the solar cycle is not so good, it is a way to make contacts with other stations using very little power, and stations that normally would not be able to be heard by the average operator because the signals are down in the noise. And that won't make much sense to a non-ham radio operator, but if you're a ham, you know what I'm talking about. Noise is the great enemy, which we've talked about ad nauseum on this program. It's what keeps you from making the contacts that you want to make. And the idea behind this particular mode was we can continue to make these contacts because the computer can hear signals that a human being cannot hear.
Yeah, you have to consider, you're actually, as far as the software itself and the computer, it can hear down, I think the normal contact is between minus 10 and minus 30 under the noise level. And that's 10 to tough. 30 dB below the noise level.
Yeah, and you're not, and a human being's not going to be able to communicate under those circumstances.
And that's why the FT8 is so good, because it filters out the noise and it can hear stuff that I've actually hit Hawaii before, and I could never hear Hawaii on this station. But it's because that thing could hear 20 dB below the noise, and it's going to make it.
Well, computers are amazing, aren't they? And it's something that is relatively new, because when you think back, there weren't computers. This is something that has happened during our lifetimes, this phenomena. I can remember being back in the 1970s in business and not having access to a computer. There were very few places, very, very few businesses that had a computer, and there were no homes that had a computer. So look how things have changed just in that period of time. You know, we're talking 50 years. So that's in the course of most of our lifetimes. We have seen all this stuff happen. And the internet and email and all these things that we enjoy today came about because of the government and the military and amateur radio. Most of this started with amateurs.
Yep, amateurs was the reason you actually have modems right now. The first modem was actually a packet modem.
That's interesting, isn't it?
Yep.
And look how far things have come. I wonder how many people in the audience tonight remember dial-up. Did you have a dial-up connection? Think back to what it was like in 1980. Think how AOL was such a big deal, America Online. And today we just laugh at that kind of stuff. I can remember being on the computer and trying to send messages to people in my business. And then one of the kids upstairs would pick the phone up and it would knock me right off the computer.
Yep.
And today we just laugh at that kind of stuff, but that has all happened during our lifetimes.
Well, you can thank cable TV and cable and the cable companies for all that, because they tend to, because of the cable and the different frequencies that it travels out of the cable, you don't have that issue anymore. Your phone comes in a way different place. I mean, look at back in the 80s, how much you used to pay for long distance.
That, in fact, my wife and I were talking about that last night. I mean, long distance to me anymore is just sitting down on my radio and talk. I talked with a gentleman last night in the Gulf of California, which is actually in the Pacific Ocean off of the side of Mexico. And he was talking to me on his radio. Now, that's a long distance communication right there. But I can remember as a kid having to wait until certain hours in the evening to make your long distance call because the rates went down. Do you remember doing that?
After 7 o'clock.
You betcha. The rates went down, and I can remember it was an expensive proposition to call grandma and grandpa. You better know what you were going to say and get your Christmas list out there before they decided they had paid enough. And today, people don't even really use a hardwired telephone any longer. I know that our phone service is all done with these, and our home phone, which used to be a hardwired Ma Bell phone, which is, of course became AT&T, but that runs through the internet. So there isn't anything hardwired to anybody around here anymore. And rarely do I even use the phone. The people that I know are on ham radio.
When we talk about the long distance thing, that song, Sylvia's Mother, comes into my mind. And the operator said 40 cents more for the next
that's right.
3 minutes.
Well, there was a song that I was listening to the other day, and it was an old Rod Stewart song that was popular when I was at Rock 107. And I had to hear that song a million times. To this day, I hate the song. If it comes on, I'll just shut my radio off. But
I know what not to put on here.
The song was called "Do You Think I'm Sexy?"
Oh, yeah.
And in the song, there's a line that says, "Wait a minute, before we go much further, give me a dime so I can call my mother." Now, who remembers payphones, number one? And then who remembers when you could put a dime in the payphone and make a call? Those were the days, Pat. I'm showing my age.
In earlier late 60s, it was a nickel.
Yeah,
I remember right.
Yeah, those days are over. Now try to find a payphone. See if you can make a call at all.
Yeah, I got one right here. I pay dearly for that.
A payphone. Yeah, that's good. I like that. Pat, you've been on top of this all night long.
Thanks.
That's the reoccurring theme through this entire show tonight is Pat's jokes. It's been all good. Pat is our Elmer. He is N8. Oh, quiet, please. I am Jerry, KG8RRY, and it has been a lot of fun tonight, folks. We're glad that you took the time to be with us, and you've learned now that there's 50 things that you can do tonight. Try not to do them all tonight. Try to stretch it out for a little while, but there's 50 things. I'll bet there's 150 things that you can do in ham radio. All you have to do is get started. A good place to get started if you're listening to the show or you're watching the show and you are interested in ham radio is give a call to the local ham radio club. Just Google it. Just put your zip code in and put ham radio club, and you'll be surprised what comes up. And if you're in Cuyahoga Falls, where Pat is the president of the Cuyahoga Falls Club. Down where I live in a place called Massillon, Ohio, we have a club here. There's a club in just about every city. All you have to do is hunt it up, and there will be people there that will welcome you, that will be happy to see you, and you can learn a lot about this great hobby.
And you'd be amazed at the amount of talent that's in these clubs.
It is incredible, isn't it? There's somebody that knows something about everything.
Of hours. You know, you've got people that have been in my club. You know, I've got people that are 84, 85 years old in here, and they've been in radio most of their life.
Yes.
You know, and that kind of experience, you just can't buy that.
And the stuff they've seen down through the years, like we were just talking about, just the big changes, and nothing ever stays the same. It all just keeps flowing like a river.
I've had guys tell me before, you know, I can remember back when I got my license, I had to go to Detroit, and I had to sit in with the men in the black suits.
Those were the days. And I had a friend of mine that made one of those trips up to Detroit, and he didn't pass. And then there was a period of time that you couldn't sit for the test. You had to wait a certain amount of time, and then you had to make that trip all the way back up to Detroit again.
Yep.
I wonder if people would do that today.
I kind of doubt it.
That was a different world back then. When I got my first class radio telephone license, I had to go to Columbus, and I was a teenager, so my mom and I made a roadie, and we drove down to Columbus and stayed in a hotel room the night before because I wanted to be fresh for the test, and went in Columbus and had to sit there with the FCC administrators giving the test, and they were not nice people. They were very matter of fact, and they were very stern is the word that I would use to describe them. So today, when you go to the clubs and you test for your radio license, you'll find that people are very friendly. It's a whole different atmosphere in 2001 than it was back in those days. Believe me.
Exactly.
Well, Pat, it's been a great night.
Yeah, it was fun. That's always fun doing this show.
And for you that have joined us tonight, be sure and be here next Tuesday night, 7 o'clock p.m., right here on the Crooked River for another edition of The World According to Elmer. In the meantime, 73, have a wonderful week, and we'll see you next week.
7-3, y'all.
We hope you enjoyed this presentation of the Crooked River Radio Network. See you again soon.